I'm Bob Brill. He's Erik Kramer. Welcome to Kramer and Brill, an NFL podcast and videocast. Each week, we take a look at what's going on in the NFL, and during the season, we analyze fantasy picks. Now, this week, we're looking at the NFL draft, and in particular, the quarterbacks and running backs who may or may not go in the first round. My esteemed colleague, former NFL quarterback Erik Kramer, who provides his valuable insights to the process. And you can join us each week by finding the podcast wherever you get your shows. And for the video cast, just check out my Bob Brill YouTube channel. Easiest way to get all of this, just go directly to our website. That's kramerandbrill.com, www.kramerandbrill.com. And all the links are right there on the homepage, plus past shows. So you can take a look at that as well. So let's get right to it. Talking the draft, as far as quarterbacks are concerned, lies at the feet of two players, Pitt's Kenny Pickett and Liberty's Malik Willis. Now, Willis is the guy I want to talk about first. He's got a cannon for an arm, literally can throw the ball 80 yards in the air. He can run. He's a little smallish at 6'1", but he has that awesome blend of talent and potential, the danger of potential. I really like him, but my thoughts are with his small school competition. Now, what are you thinking?
Small school, big school makes no difference to me. Remember, Willis did start out at Auburn. What I think leads to, say, long-term consistent production for a quarterback in the NFL is the ability to, A, read coverages, anticipate throws, move zone defenders around, be accurate from inside the pocket and on the move, and move through the progression fluidly, as I've mentioned many times before. Right. Be willing to look deep and hit your checkdowns and have the athleticism not only to escape, but create. And I think, you notice how, I didn't say how strong his arm are, because that makes zero difference in the big scheme of things. And I mentioned his athleticism. I just mentioned athleticism, period, but his in particular is last on the list. Great if you can create, not completely necessary. And so case in point, Steve Young started out in the USFL,
right?
Went to Tampa Bay. Between the two teams, did nothing. Great athlete, but when he learned the passing game and you learn how to play this game with your feet, then and in sync with, in rhythm with everybody, then he turned into the gold standard when he played. And so, I'm a little cool actually on Malik Willis.
Really?
Because, well, I am, because the daily grind of an NFL career isn't about a pro day, check it as far as you can, go down and run and high five the guy who caught it. That's not reality. That's go backyard. That's on the beach. It's just in the park, but that's not in an NFL stadium ever. And there's ups, there's downs. Can you come back from throwing a few interceptions and still win the game? On the last drive where you just threw one before for a touchdown maybe. And so those are the things that I want to see Malik Willis and all quarterbacks do. I am sketchy on him because there's no talk about that in him ever doing that. And so those type of quarterbacks are in and out of the league like that. So I don't really think he's a first round draft pick.
That's interesting, because all the talk is about him maybe going ahead of Kenny Pickett, and that I want to move on to Kenny Pickett now at Pitt. Probably the most talked about of what is considered a fairly weak quarterback class this year. I mean, not like last couple of years, we had great classes. He's a prototype size, 6'3", 220. He runs well, he moves well, it seems, and he's shown himself smart, and he's played well against top contenders. But then there's this question I've never heard of before, and I guess it is a thing, his small hands, which of course links to 38 fumbles in his career in college. And I guess you have a smaller ball in college. Is that really much of an issue?
So if small hands were an issue in fumbling, don't you think Barry Sanders would have led the league in fumbles every year of his 10-year career? So did Craig had, that's the first I ever heard about small hands. Small hands don't mean a damn thing. Does it mean anything in Kenny Pickett's ability to throw a ball? No. Fumbles, and I don't know where the 38 fumbles came from, but that could be a myriad of things. That could be protection. It could be him holding onto the ball too long. It could be who knows what. But it doesn't seem to matter because in the last year, you find me a better quarterback ever in college football.
He's been good. He's been really good.
Well, yeah. So that's why he's the head of this class. And I don't care if it was last year's class, he would have been up there too.
I want to talk about some of those, and I'm with you on Kenny Pickett. I really like Kenny Pickett, and I only got to see him in like one game, and it was toward the end of the year. But I was amazed that his reaction when forced out of the pocket, and I think you saw the game where he ended up running for like a 40-yard touchdown in the opening moments of the game when he got forced out, and he just took off, and he ran really looked like a running back running down there. Desmond Ritter
reminds me, just real quick, he reminds me of another version, sort of like a Joe Burrow, right?
Yeah, so very much. Yeah, I would say that.
He's inside and outside of the pocket, equally as good. He creates, he reads defense, he anticipates throws, he's accurate as hell. He fakes a slide to create long runs like that. If
that was great.
So, I mean, right. I mean, the guy he's at the top of this year's class. He's at the top of any year's draft class as a quarterback.
We also have some other guys who aren't talked about as much. Maybe you talk about him a little bit. Desmond Ritter, Cincinnati, another top specimen, 6'3", 207, loaded with confidence. There's some questions about his arm strength. You have Matt Corral, Mississippi, 6'2", 205. Sam Howell, North Carolina, 6'1", 220, considered mid-rounders. Team might take a chance at 6'4", 226-pound. Carson stronger than that. I mean, you look at it, he's this opposing figure, but he's also coming off 2 right knee operations. So you got to move him down the list just because of that. Talk about some of those guys.
Well, let's go back to Desmond Ritter. Here's what I love about him. I love about the entire Cincinnati Bearcat story these last couple of years. They are, and he are, nobody looks at them and goes, oh, there's a first-round guy, or there's a team that's destined for greatness, but they just work their ass off, and they are out to prove everybody wrong, and they did. And I think Desmond Ritter, whether he goes in the first round or the third round or the seventh round, makes no difference to me. I'm sure it does to him, but he's the type of guy, I think, that when you watch him play, he does move around like you'd like a guy to be alert to what's going on in the defense. He's creative. He's confident, as you talked about. Rightfully so. Real confidence only comes from doing things very well over an extended period of time. You can't fake it. And that's what I think you get with Desmond Ritter. He's a tough guy. He's determined. He perseveres, and he's got something that not a lot of other quarterbacks have, and that's he's out to prove you and everybody. He's out to prove the kid down the street wrong.
Yeah. Matt Corral, I think, is another guy who gets talked about quite a bit. What do we know about Matt Corral?
Well, he started out anyway at high school right down the street here at Oaks Christian, and then ended up down at Long Beach Poly, where he graduated from, and then kind of disappeared really in college until Lane Kiffin arrived. And Lane Kiffin's had a productive influence on a lot of offenses, including at Alabama, quarterbacks, and an entire offense. So he's a good coach. Matt Corral should not be penalized because of it. What I think it did, the two of them meshing together and the offense that they ran and the type of player that Matt Corral is, he's athletic and he's gritty and he's not afraid to make a play in or outside the pocket. He hangs in there a long time and takes hits because of it, but he's productive. And so there's a guy that could easily slip up into the first round and nobody would have any, at least I wouldn't think there's any issue with that. And then you mentioned, I think, Sam Howell.
Sam Howell, North Carolina, yeah.
Right. And so, one thing that Mac Brown is a great recruiter. I will say this, he got inducted into the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame last year. And I was back there for that because someone at NC State did also, the guy that was recruiting coordinator when I was there.
Yeah.
Anyway, but in all the years that Mac Brown, which I don't think were many, played against NC State and Dick Sheridan, he didn't win once. And so I think in terms of a quarterback, Sam Howell did not live up to the expectations that everybody had for him this year. And I didn't watch any of their games, but I did see some of the highlights or lowlights in his case, where he was throwing into double, triple coverage and holding the ball way too long past, on one guy. And so that to me signals a few red flags there. So does he have the ability to, kind of hang in there, not be the guy for a while or who knows how long? And then can he hang out and patiently wait and then take advantage and show that he's prepared by the way he plays? I don't know that.
Yeah. Well, teams looking for quarterbacks, they include Detroit picking number 2, Houston number 3, Carolina number 6, Atlanta number 7, Seattle number 9, and Pittsburgh at number 20. Now, I don't see either Pickett or Willis going top 5, but I think Atlanta, Carolina, and Seattle could all go there because they've signed veterans to limited deals that, for as a bridge, so to speak. And the question is, could Pickett fall to the Steelers at number 20, who have signed Mitch Trubisky as a bridge? And to me, that might happen only if they get really lucky or if they're bluffing about their desire for him and they make a trade. The problem is they don't have enough draft capital to make a trade. I look at that situation like I looked at Roethlisberger when he came out and Rivers. They both came out the same year. And the talk was the Steelers wanted Rivers and they didn't want Roethlisberger. And now it seemed like it came from somewhere. And I got to think it came from the Steeler camp as let's get something out there. And the more the talk was, the higher Rivers went on the draft boards and the lower Roethlisberger went. And the Steelers didn't want Rivers in the first place. They wanted Roethlisberger, and they ended up getting him because somebody else, San Diego, took Rivers. And I'm thinking maybe it's the same thing, but I'm not so sure Kenny Pickett can last to number 20.
Right. Well, actually, the Chargers took Eli Manning.
Yeah, and then they made the trade.
Do you remember the face he had on that when he was up there holding the jersey? So you're right. The trade did happen. But I think Pickett knows no way he's going to fall to Pittsburgh at number 20. And you're right. Pittsburgh has 0 draft capital, which would mean if they really want to start over, they have to be willing to give up actual players to move up that high, which Carolina's sitting at number 6. And I think Carolina can move down because they have only got the next pick comes at 147. Mm-hmm. So they can acquire picks and move down and still get Kenny Pickett. That's what I think is going to happen. I think if you look at, you talk about this not being a deep draft class. So what? Look at all the guys, like when Drew Brees, I think it was 2001, he was the first quarterback taken in the second round. Mm-hmm. Then you got Brady in 2000, right? And he was a
round 6.
199, I think, number 199, right? So, and then you got the guy that I think is probably the greatest ever in Montana, who was a 3rd round pick. Mm-hmm. And so you can draft players that aren't necessarily 1st round picks because there's no guarantee on 1st round picks, even quarterbacks especially. And, you can develop people, which look at Steve Young. There we go back to him again. And he sat and watched from probably the greatest coach of all time, at least in the passing game, playing behind probably the greatest quarterback of all time. And there was a friend of mine that was on that team. I don't know if you've heard me tell you this story before, but when Steve Young couldn't figure out why he wasn't playing, this friend of mine who wasn't a quarterback goes, well, Steve, and they were friends. He goes, Steve, all I know is that when Joe gets rid of the ball, it's 1, 2, 3, throw. When you get rid of the ball, it's 1, 2, 3, throw. And then, as I said, by the time I came around and started playing, Steve Young was that guy.
Yeah.
So I think you can develop those type of players. Does this draft have any of those? I don't know, but I would venture to say they probably do.
You mentioned Barry Sanders earlier. I just saw an ESPN top 100 moments. It wasn't top 100 players, but it was top 100 moments. And you were there. There was a picture of you handing off to Barry Sanders.
Right. That's about, Barry was either the guy you handed off to, or when no one else was open, you dump him the ball in it, or we had a little screen to Barry, which he often made,
big yardage.
Big yardage. Yeah, that could go from 8 to 80 for sure.
Well, looking at the running backs, and it's not likely one of them will go in the 1st round at all. Best bets are Breece Hall of Ohio State, who has breakaway speed and size at 5'11". And the thing the NFL likes about him, he's a 3-down back. He's got good hands. He's a good receiver.
Well, and as you look at who's drafting in what order, you go down to number 25 with the Buffalo Bills, who've got everything but that guy. And if they want to make the big push this year, in addition to getting this playoff rule changed for overtime, they could add that back, and I think they'd be the front runner in the AFC.
I think that's a good shot. That if he sneaks into the first round, or if a running back sneaks into the first round, I think that's where it's going to be. I think it's going to be Buffalo. I think you're exactly right. Kenny Walker, the third of Michigan State, similar in size to Hall, as is James Cook of Georgia. Cook at 5'11" has pedigree on his side too. He's Delvin Cook's brother, and Delvin Cook is one of the premier running backs in the NFL. I think the sleeper pick here might be Brian Robinson of Alabama. He got his start after Najee Harris went to Pittsburgh. 271 carries in his final season. He's fast, has patience. 6'2", 225. He's the biggest of the better backs, too.
Love Brian Robinson. I mean, Alabama is like at every position. They got the next first rounder behind the first rounder that's playing.
Yeah.
And Brian Robinson, to me, he could be the guy after Najee Harris who just, or was it even, it wasn't, was it Najee Harris or was it, who's the guy with the Raiders now?
Oh no, he was before him. I know who you're talking about.
Well, anyway, they got receivers, they got running backs, they got left tackles, they got quarterbacks. That's probably the worst of their positions is quarterback. And so, yeah, Brian Robinson knows how to finish off runs. He's tough. Obviously, played in a lot of big games at Alabama. Come out and showed himself well. But I think going back to Kenneth Walker, third, he's to me the best combination of size, speed, balance after contact, probably in this draft, and that includes Bryce. Was it Brees? The guy from Ohio State.
Brees Hall.
Yeah, and he's got breakaway speed. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Jonathan Taylor, and probably not yet is as refined with reading and letting plays develop, and then making that little quick first cut and only cut. But I think he'll learn that over time. And so I like Kenneth Walker a lot. He shows up big in a lot of big moments.
Teams needing running backs. We mentioned Buffalo. At Tennessee at number 26, because Derrick Henry isn't getting any younger and he's had injuries recently. So I don't see them picking up a running back in the first round, but they may go there. Well,
running back anymore, and probably for a long, long time, it's not just a one-back team. So you got to have depth. First round picks that create depth is not a bad thing, because not only you've got Joe Mixon is a great back with the Bengals. Who's behind him? You can pretty much say that for probably at least 24, 25 of the 32 teams. So I think there's enough depth in this running back draft class that's going to create a lot of depth with teams that need it. You mentioned Tennessee. But look how great Derrick Henry did come back. And so there's nothing saying he's going to be out anytime soon, but there's nothing wrong with having additional players there. And I mentioned Buffalo, and that's pretty much a lot of teams in this league. They're all looking for the guy that can do, more than just one thing. We had a great guy in Chicago named Raymond Harris, who as a rookie in 1994, I think he broke 1,000 yards, but he tabbed himself ultra back, which he was. And he could block, he could catch, he could protect, he could run the ball, obviously. But then the first play of the 1995 season, he catches a little swing route, reaches out for a first down. I'm not sure if he got it or not, but breaks a collarbone or separates his shoulder, done for the year. And I don't think he ever really came back after that. And so we've seen with Ezekiel Elliott, right? Had a great first year or two and then never heard from him again. And Tony Pollard's probably the better back of the two at this point. Anyway, so I just think, running back wise, you can't have enough of them. And especially if you're a team that is looking to, it's now a 17 game season, not including playoffs. And, you've got sustainability is an issue with all your positions, especially running back.
Well, and you mentioned some of the guys that happened. Remember Robert Edwards with the Patriots had great rookie season, goes to the Pro Bowl and gets injured in a football, a volleyball or a football sand game, and injures a ligament or something, never came back, was never able to play again. And that left New England dry for a long time, And no, I think the running back position, even more than receivers, I think is the place where you need the depth only because of the fact that these guys wear down. Nobody, for a guy to carry 200 times in a season is a lot. And I mean, Kansas City, you look at them, they rotate their backs. And a number one draft pick, Edwards-Helaire, who still really, he's the number one back, but he gets rotated with two other guys,
I'm saying, your number one back is typically going to miss 2 to 5 games a year.
Yeah.
And at most, he's going to carry the ball 20 times a game.
At tops.
That's what I'm saying. So you got to have depth, and you got to have depth that you got to have players that are versatile, that are more the 3-down back type of guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because the game now is starting to become spread out. Very, very seldom anymore do you see 2 backs, a tight end, and 2 wide receivers.
Right.
It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So the game is evolving where you got to do more than just, take an inside power handoff and go get 5 yards on your own.
And not even at the goal line anymore. That'll do it for another edition of Kramer and Brill. Don't forget to join us next time, wherever you get your shows, and on my Bob Brill YouTube channel. See you next time.